Today we shall reflect on the theme, the right choice. We see that in today's world, at every moment we are faced with one choice or the other. Some choices are pretty straightforward. They are very easy to make, and we know what the choice and what we want and what we don't want. But there are other choices which are quite complex. And in that way, we have to really choose and make a compromise between one and the other. But we see that we can't have everything. We must let go of one and we must have something else. And each of these choices, each of these ways have its advantages and its disadvantages. And in a way, here is where the Ignatian discernment comes in. Ignatius would always say that when it comes to decision making, one should look at one's interior movement, at what is happening inside one's soul, and then make a decision based on that. A glance at today's first reading shows us that true peace and security comes to those who trust in the Lord and those who obey His word. We see that we are always faced with the struggle between choosing good and evil, between our will and the will of God. And this we know that we cannot overcome by our own strength. We are weak. Sometimes we have our weaknesses, our faults. But when we place our trust in God, when we place our trust in Jesus, it is only then wherein we get the grace to deal with all this. It is the Lord who powers us, who gives us His grace to deal with these problems in life. And God offers us grace and protection only if we are willing to accept it. Sometimes we may receive the grace, but sometimes if we are an obstacle, if we block it, then we see that the grace of God does not work in our lives because we do not allow it to work in our lives. And a glance at the gospel shows us how Jesus went about doing good things. Jesus went about healing people, exorcising demons. And here we see that the kingdom of God brings healing and freedom from sin. Now Christ's exorcism brought healing to many people. Many people's lives were changed and they began to follow Him. But at the same time, we had those Jewish leaders, the scribes and the Pharisees, who were against Jesus, who at every point of time wanted to test Him, who wanted to make sure what He's doing and what He isn't. And in this way, we see that Christ Himself had to face a lot of problems in His life. We see that 40 days in the desert, He was tempted, but He was able to overcome it. In His entire ministry, He had to face constant persecution, constant scrutiny, but still He was able to do it. And this was all possible because Christ was connected with the Father. Every time, whenever Jesus found some spare time, He would go and pray. He would make time to build the relationship between Him and His Father. And that is exactly what He calls each and every one of us today. That if we are rooted in Him, whatever problem comes in our lives, we will be able to stand firm. We also see that the Jewish leaders then charged Him of exorcising demons in the name of Beelzebul. And Jesus gives a perfect example. Something that is divided against itself cannot stand. And in a way, He makes reference to Moses when He points to the finger of God. Just as Moses was able to confront Pharaoh and his magicians who represented the kingdom of darkness, similarly we see that Christ gives us the power to fight against sins and to fight against all that is evil. And at last, Jesus places us with a question: who is the master of our life? Is it Jesus, or are we attracted to the worldly things? When it comes to Jesus, it is either this or that. It is either that we are with Him or we are not with Him. And in a way, let us especially pray for the grace that when it comes to decision making, that we may be filled with the grace to make a right decision, and that we may follow Jesus and be rooted to Him at every step of the way.